you say your last name? Last name? Cryns?
Cryns.
I'm so glad I asked.
I cry.
Okay.
Well, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to pause as we allow people to come in. Thank you for joining us for our next edition of the 49er Industry Chat. My name is Noemi Zapata, and I'm the Director of Alumni Engagement here at California State University, Long Beach. We thank you for joining us today. Before we start our session, I would like to let you know this is being recorded and it will live on demand on our website at csulb.edu/alumni. Also, we encourage you to use our Q&A box located below or above your screen to submit any questions throughout the chat for our guest speaker today. And now it's my honor to introduce our moderator for the chat. The moderator for our chat today is Lucia Cos. Lucia earned her degree in Spanish in 1975. She was recognized as a distinguished alumna in 2005 and now serves as an annual alumni council member for CSULB alumni. Lucia, thank you for moderating the chat today. And now I pass it on over to you.
Great. Well, good. I think it's afternoon or close to afternoon. Thanks for joining us. And excuse the glare. I moved all over the room and there's just glare from the screen. So after 13 years working in California state mental hospitals and prisons, Yvonne Cryns retired from the Correctional Training Facility in Soledad. She held an RN position at Atascadero State Hospital and was a first psychiatric nurse practitioner along with another CSULB classmate at Coalinga State Hospital and at the Correctional Training Facility. She was an Adjunct Clinical Nurse Educator for Behavioral Health with Fresno Community College. She was appointed to the Forensic Psychiatric Nurses Council Steering Committee from 2015 to 2018 of the American Psychiatric Nurses Association. Yvonne holds a bachelor's degree from Indiana University, a Juris Doctor degree from Northern Illinois University College of Law, and a master in nursing and a certificate as a nurse practitioner from Cal State University, Long Beach. Please join me in welcoming our 49er industry host, Miss Yvonne Cryns. Yvonne?
Hi. Good to be here. Hello. I'm sorry. Is that me? Yikes.
Yvonne? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So I guess we can start by your, I know you came to Cal State Long Beach for your post-grad work, but maybe you can start by kind of giving us the transition from your education frame point and just jumping into the work.
Sure. Are you getting that echo too?
Yeah.
We are, Yvonne. Maybe turn off your mic from your computer and we'll just use your phone line.
Yeah, it's off. Let's see. Oh, mute. Do I do mute?
Yeah, just mute.
No. She's muted.
Oh.
Come back on. Come back on, Yvonne.
Cynthia, could you make the phone line a host so that we could hear her through her phone?
1 second, let me try that now.
Sorry, we apologize.
Yeah, technical difficulties.
Okay, let's try that. See if you can use your phone line, Yvonne. Okay, it's not working on this end. Let me.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
I feel like I'm in a commercial. Okay.
Oh, gosh, this is great. It worked.
Okay.
So,
Well, technology is not what I studied, obviously. Anyway, you had asked how I got started, and I took a very scenic route to get to my career as a nurse practitioner. I was a homemaker, wife, mother for most of my younger adult life. And I always had an interest in education. And I attended a variety of junior colleges and universities. And it took me about, I think, 12 schools and 34 years to actually get a bachelor's degree. A few years before I did that, in '98, I got a nursing degree and got my license, and then got my undergrad degree from Indiana University. They offered a distance program, which worked for me because I had children and couldn't really travel to any of the four-year colleges. We lived in a somewhat rural area in northern Illinois. I graduated on a Friday with my bachelor's degree, and on Monday I started law school. And 3 years later I graduated, and it was a great education, but a lot of work. But I learned a lot. And then I wasn't able to find a job near my house, and I decided I would just dust off my nursing license and see if I could find some work. And again, I wasn't able to find anything near my home, but I was able to find a job in California, working for the state of California at Atascadero State Hospital. And so my husband and I moved out here in 2007, and I started working as a nurse at Atascadero State Hospital. I was able to take advantage of a program that they offered to get my master's degree in nursing, something they called the 2020 program, where you could work half of a 40-hour week every week and then get paid your full salary while you were going to school. So I did that for my second year. My first year I worked full time. And then I graduated in 2011, and ironically, Atascadero State Hospital did not want to hire any of us who had just completed this program, not as nurse practitioners anyway. They were happy to keep us as nurses. And so another CSULB graduate and I applied at Coalinga State Hospital, and they hired us, and we were the first psych nurse practitioners there. And in fact, he's still there, Benjamin Brown. And I worked there for 6 years, and then felt like I needed a little bit of a change, and went to the prison system, where I spent the last 2 years, and I retired last year. And I haven't gone back to work yet. I have done some volunteer things because of COVID, working at vaccination sites, but I haven't actually done any psychiatric nurse practitioner work.
wow. So it's kind of circuitous route from Indiana.
Yeah.
And I'm curious about the Juris Doctorate. What were your goals in terms of your trajectory at that time?
Well, my goal initially was just to get an undergrad degree, but I decided to get a nursing degree. I was at the time working on legislation for midwives in Illinois, and that seemed to offer some stature to our desire to have somebody who could speak as somewhat of a medical expert in some way. So I did that. And that was my primary goal. I wasn't focused on actually working as a nurse at that time. But then when I was hired by Atascadero, I found that I was very interested in the psychiatric side of things. And I found that the psychotherapy aspects were very interesting to me, much more so than just straight like medical nursing with various illnesses and diseases and that. I found that the mental health aspect was very exciting, and it was new to me because in most of our nursing programs, I mean, up until very recently, mental health was just kind of mentioned and sort of got delegated to the back room. I had one nursing professor call it the bastard stepchild of nursing, where, you know, you had to do that rotation, but it really wasn't that important. Nobody really cared, although I'm happy to say that now there is a lot more focus on mental health in so many areas of our lives. I think those of us who have been listening to a lot of the people who have had loved ones who have had interactions with police who are mentally ill, or those who, like me, have worked in the prison or jail or state hospital settings, even emergency rooms. A lot of focus now on mental illness and how it should be dealt with rather than criminalized. So I'm happy about that, and happy I was, yeah.
So Yvonne, when you were at Cal State Long Beach, was any of your focus in the psychiatric side of the house in terms of the program there?
Yeah, well, my second year, it was primarily spent focused on the mental health aspect of my training. And we, you know, were asked to do 500 plus hours in a clinical setting with that as our main focus. Mm-hmm. And we also had courses that focused on learning about the brain and psychotherapy, which for nurses is a component of psychiatric mental health nursing. So yes, we did do a lot in that area.
Now, concentrating just right now on Cal State Long Beach, the program there, you were on that 2020 program. So where were you working locally while you were going to school?
I was with the state hospital in Atascadero. Okay. They were offering RNs who wanted to go on to get their master's degree in mental health nurse, you know, as a psychiatric nurse practitioner, right. Offered us this 2020 program. And so I was there 20 hours a week working as an RN while I was in school.
Now, where's Atascadero? Because I'm trying to think of the distance between Cal State Long Beach and doing the 2020 program and Atascadero. How do you balance that?
That was very difficult. Atascadero State Hospital specifically picked Long Beach as the only school we could go to attain this degree and the certification. I don't know why. I mean, we really aren't closer to anybody else. San Francisco is not closer. We're easier to get to. What most of us did from up in my direction is we would drive down the day before or early that morning for our classes and then spend the night down there before we would come back later. I was fortunate. I had children who were living in Los Angeles at the time. And so I didn't have to get a motel room or hotel room. We were able to stay with them. And so it was kind of two good things. I got to see my family, and I also got to go to school on those days. Long Beach, I thought, did a really good job accommodating the graduate students in that program. They tried very hard to make it so you could get all your courses in a single day. It made for a long day, but because many of us were coming from a distance, it made it doable. If they had spread out over 3 or 4 days, probably most of us wouldn't have been able to do that.
Now, I have a few questions that have come through. So
Okay.
did your the Juris Doctorate serve you in your role working in the psychiatric hospitals and prisons? Did that background adjust your outlook on patient care?
I think it was helpful for me. I don't think it's a requirement. Certainly, I had a good understanding when I'm reading patients' charts and their crimes were in there, or what they were being sent to the prison for, or the state hospital afterward. I think it possibly made me a little more empathetic with them. I could better understand for some of them what had happened. At the state hospital, all of those patients that I was seeing, for the most part, had already completed their prison time, and then were found to be too dangerous or unable to, for some other reason, to be released back to the community. So they would be reviewed every year. Generally, they were just so mentally ill, they didn't understand their mental illness. And so they'd refuse to take medication, and or they were violent, and the court isn't going to release them knowing that, they're likely to harm somebody else. So I think it did help me.
So what drew you to continue to work in the prison system is another question.
Okay, I was working for the state, and they have good benefits, and I found that the majority of the people I worked with were really nice. I liked them. I liked the environment. I went to the prison because when I was at the state hospital, especially at Coalinga, I had a number of psychiatrists who were friends who were working with me there, and many of them had worked at the prisons and were telling me, explaining how it was different, and in some ways a nicer environment. What I was happy to learn was that in general, working at the prisons were much safer for practitioners than working in the state hospital. And the reason for that is at the state hospitals, the patients are able to freely move about, but in the prisons, things are much more controlled, and you're not likely to have, 30 or 40 patients strolling around you. It just doesn't happen.
So that kind of sounds like you answered another question, which was, what were some of the biggest differences and challenges in patient care working in prisons? Was there other?
Yeah, there were. It was different for me. When I worked at the state hospital, we were never allowed to bring a patient into our office. We always had to go into an interview room, leave the door open or prop it open, or have somebody else with us to do our meetings or appointments with our patients. In the prison setting, that didn't happen. I had an office. I was to bring my patients into the office to do my interview with them for their medication management. And so that was very different. Also, because I had a much larger caseload in the prison, I saw hundreds of people. Whereas in the state hospital, because these patients aren't going anywhere, I'd be assigned to a unit. Most of the units had somewhere between 30 and 50, and these were all men on the unit. And so I would see them every day, and I had to do at least one assessment every month and write a little report on it, you know, for medication management and that. But in the prison, I only saw them once every 90 days, unless there was a reason to see them more frequently. And they came from all over the area I was in the prison. It wasn't limited to like one house or that. So it was different.
So what is a correctional training facility? Where does the training aspect come in?
Good question.
Not my question, I'm reading it.
I know. That's the name of the facility. I think when they first opened it up, the anticipation was that they would actually do a lot of rehabilitation with the inmates there. They would give them some kind of like job training, education to do things. When I was there, there was very little what I call really useful employment. A lot of the inmates would work in like a factory that was on the premises where they would make uniforms for other prisoners throughout the state. Or for some of them, they were learning, but I'm not sure how far they got with it. They were making like little houses, like they've been giving to the homeless. They were doing some of that work. But about the time that seemed to be kicking into gear, COVID started and that just stopped. And I don't know what other real training was going on there. I did have a number of my patients who had to come off of medication because they wanted to go to the fire camp. And this is something that's kind of come under scrutiny recently, is the use of prisoners or inmates to work at the fires. My experience in dealing with some of these men was that they loved to do this because they felt they were doing real work. It was very satisfying for them. There was an element of danger in it, of course, and it got them into a more normal life environment, if you will. But one of the requirements is they could not be on any psychiatric medication. And so for some, they were maybe taking something to help with sleep or ADHD, and they just decide I'll go without it. And for some, they were able to do that and were successful. For others, they couldn't. And so the fire dream kind of faded because they knew they needed the medication.
No.
But that's kind of what I can remember of that.
No, that's a good insight. How do you see the field evolving throughout your career in terms of nurse training, education, systemic changes, patient care, and funding? That's a big mouthful, but.
Yeah, it is. I'll try to, I don't know if I'll remember all of those.
Oh, no, that's
things,
okay. That's okay.
One of the things that I've definitely noticed in the past few years, especially because I got involved, I'm kind of on the edges of training nurses, is that they're starting to incorporate the variety of like classes, courses, different elements, so that it's not like, okay, we're going to study mental health here and we're going to do med surg over here, and this, you know, having everything compartmentalized. They're trying to kind of pull it all together. So when nurses are being trained, they kind of see a person as the whole person, not just as different little aspects of some kind of medical problem. And I think that's a good thing. I really do. I also see, as I had already mentioned, much more focus on mental health coming into play, a far greater focus on addiction issues, which used to be extremely stigmatized, but now that we have medication-assisted treatment available for those who have addictions to alcohol and other substances, and there's a greater focus on helping people with those problems. I think nursing is also jumping on board with that and trying to incorporate education in that area so that our nurses will be able to be more sympathetic, also be able to act. If they encounter someone with an addiction, perhaps they can help them find a way to get help, or at least kind of push them in that direction gently. For nurse practitioners, there is the medication-assisted treatment, which enables you to get recognized by the federal government after you complete a program to be part of that. And there's different medications that can be prescribed, but you need to have some training in order to do that. At my facility, I went through the training and then I couldn't actually use it because they made a decision, and this might be throughout the whole state of California with the corrections, is that was always going to be done through the medical side. So that, like, the primary care, they were the people who were going to be handling the addiction issues. So I had a good relationship with the physicians that I worked with, and would make recommendations to them that, you know, someone came in and told me they had just used heroin or some other opioid or, I don't know, some other drug, and I could order a lab so that it would be detected, so then they could get the proper care that's needed.
So have you seen, is this a growing kind of a field of nursing that's, you know, that you've noticed? Is that a growing area of focus?
I think it's nursing, it's social workers, psychologists. I think, you know, physicians. It's because we're really trying hard to help people who have addictions. The opioid death rate has skyrocketed. In the past few years, fentanyl has found its way into many products in this country. I mean, illegally, but people are still using them, and we have a phenomenal death rate from that, and it's needless. And it's, you know, if we could just help people who have addictions get help and not feel like they've done something wrong, they're not stigmatized, but actually help them, we could lower that death rate, and I think society as a whole would be better off. So yeah, I do think nurses have more opportunity. There's more clinics opening. There's just more recognition of the problem. Right. And also, you know, as different sources of education are recognizing addictions and mental health issues, I think nurses are stepping up to the plate to educate police departments and others about what's available, how to help if you see somebody who's mentally ill or on drugs, behaving erratically, how that can be de-escalated, or how you can keep everybody safe. And I think nurses are at the forefront of much of that.
So would that be something you could encourage? Some of our listeners may be looking at, you know, kind of looking into this this emphasis or focus in the field of nursing? Because sounds like it's getting a little broader in terms of the mental health piece.
Yeah, I think there's a growing opportunity to, if someone is really interested in this, to do that full time. There's numerous clinics. Most of our county health departments have some sort of mental health or addiction area that they're running, because it's everywhere. Every county has problems. It's not just, you know, oh, it's the poor areas. No, it's everywhere. It's anybody can become an addict.
Surprise.
Yeah.
So another question that came through is, working with mental health and prison patients can be emotionally taxing. How do you maintain a healthy balance for yourself?
There were days it was really hard.
Yeah, it sounds pretty intense.
It could be. I would say the primary complaint that came to me from my patients, I think a lot of people in prison, I feel pretty hopeless. For some of them, there probably is the fact that they did not do what they were accused of doing, so they may be innocent of that, or they got dumped on with charges and have a very long sentence, and just feel like everything is just not going well for them and never will. Suicide is very high in the prisons, and we're constantly trying to screen people who might be feeling like there was no point in living. There was a lot of training done in that area. Sadly, a lot of the people that I knew who, I should say, I didn't know them. A lot of the people who did commit suicide as inmates, there really were no outward triggers that we could see. They didn't talk to anybody. They weren't in mental health. Nobody seemed to notice anything until, you know, they were gone. And that was really hard. You know, when somebody that you may have seen once, you know, a year ago killed himself, it was pretty awful, because you always wonder, what could I have done? And I think what I ended up with a lot of times was just being supportive of some of the other coworkers who actually had relationships with some of those people. And that was hard, because it was, I will say this, we didn't get a lot of support individually when things got tough. And so we kind of relied on each other. If you had a really tough day, sometimes I go talk to different psychologists or social worker that I was working with, or some other staff, and we tended to have good camaraderie in that way. I'm sorry, you were asking something else, and now I can't remember.
No, that's okay. Just along those lines, do you have a lot of people that are in school or in training of some sort that, you know, I mean, what's the best advice you can give them? Because you do have to be a certain kind of person to do this kind of work.
Yeah, I think you just have to, first of all, you have to be good at setting boundaries. In the state hospital, I worked at Coalinga, and that hospital is where our state sends the sexually, what they call sexually violent predators. And what that means is that they've committed some kind of sex crimes. Their crimes may not have had any true violence in them. Nobody got stabbed, beat up, hit with a gun, or shot. But just because it was a sexual crime, it's considered violent. And some of those people, and like I said, they were all men that I was dealing with at the state hospital, they are very manipulative. The way they got their victims to cooperate had to do with their charm. And every year there are people who work at the state hospital, and there's a number of our hospitals here that get what they call walked out. They in some way cross the line in a relationship with one of these men, and you know, you're not to form this emotional attachment. You're not to have a relationship with them in that way. It should always be very professional. And I think you have to be able to understand that that's what you're going to have to do if you work in these settings. You can't get involved. You can't be hugging and that's not allowed. You know, in a regular hospital setting or clinic setting, that may be absolutely appropriate to do, but not in a state hospital, not in a prison.
Right. And I'm going to guess there's different, you don't have to work in a prison, but there are some outpatient. One of the questions that came in was, so for someone that's interested in becoming a psychiatric nurse practitioner, do you recommend that they know what setting they want to work in, like outpatient clinics, inpatient, private, psychiatric, etc.?
I think you don't need to know that at the get-go. I think getting as much experience as you can in all different kinds of settings is probably ideal, because then you can decide if you like this or you don't like that, or you know, you suddenly decide, oh, I just want to do psychotherapy. I don't even want to do any medication management. There's a lot of different opportunities that are available. And now in California, we have the opportunity to be in our own practices. And that's something that nurse practitioners in the past in California did not have open to them. So I think getting as broad an education as you can, taking advantage of all the opportunities for internships and residencies, which are now becoming available for nurse practitioners, is the ideal, because then you can pick and choose what you want to do, or change your mind later and do something, you know, go somewhere else.
So another question is, how do you keep learning, or how did you keep learning throughout your career and in between degrees?
Okay, well, I like to read. And now, of course, with the internet, it makes it really easy to stay on top of things, because there are a lot of continuing education that you can access for free or you can pay for. I liked going to conferences, which we haven't been able to do for over a year, but face-to-face, I think, is great fun. I would encourage any students in the nurse practitioner program at Long Beach to seriously consider writing your final instead of just taking the test. It's just so much more meaningful to do a research paper, to me anyway. I learned so much doing that, way more than I would have just studying for a test.
Right.
Also, I don't know.
We got about 4 minutes, so I just, for some of our students that are on this call, what would you were there resources at Cal State Long Beach that you took advantage of to help the process?
Yes, I love the library, and the fact that I could access a lot of documents and research, like magazines that were hard to come by otherwise. I could access them online or through the library. That was just like the best educational opportunity I had. And I would encourage people to use that resource. Your library is just a marvelous resource.
Now, I know you were there for post-grad kind of work. So I know, and you were doing, working at a facility and going to school and traveling in between. But
Yeah.
were there any other resources or clubs or organizations that you were joined on campus or off campus? That would be.
I didn't really do anything. I didn't have time. I wasn't there long enough. But there's a national organization that there's at least two of them. The American Academy of Nurse Practitioners and the, oh my goodness, I'm having a senior moment here. American Psychiatric Nurses Association.
Okay.
Those are both very good organizations, and students can join. I believe they're both up and running with in-person conferences coming up, and you get to meet people and you can present papers, or even if you've done research that will pass their muster, hold a session when they do the conferences. And those are wonderful, wonderful resources.
We've got 2 minutes, so if you could take a really quick pick at this question and then give us your last thoughts. How have your experiences influenced you as an educator? How do you bring those experiences into the classroom to prepare the next generation?
I think one of the things that I did is I tried to make my rotation for these students incorporate the whole person. I tried to help them understand that even though they weren't interested in mental health, and pretty much nobody was really interested in mental health as these nursing students, I tried to help them understand that whether they work in the emergency room, surgery, a doctor's office, wherever they were going to meet people in their life or career who had mental health issues and whom perhaps they could make a difference for someone. And I think that was really helpful for them to think of it in that way. So that's
okay.
That's all
That sounds like a famous last word. You've got maybe less than a minute. Any last words, Yvonne?
Oh, I don't know. Just enjoy the journey.
Okay.
Well, that's about it.
Right. And you did experience the post-grad, experience on our campus. So this was very unique for a lot of our listeners. And I think, great.
And I'm grateful to Long Beach for giving me that opportunity. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Yvonne.
Yeah.
Noemi?
Thank you, Lucia. Thank you, Yvonne, for sharing your experience. What a wonderful career you've had in helping our, just community, society, and the whole mental health aspect. If any of our listeners are interested in connecting with you, are you okay if they reach out to you via LinkedIn, or maybe they could just email us and we could connect you via email, if you're okay with that?
Sure, not a problem. Any way is fine.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Everyone, thank you for joining us today for our next edition of our 49er Industry Chat. Please follow us on social media to learn about future chats like this. And this is recorded, so you can find it on our website. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
And
Yvonne,
Yvonne